I'm at the
Mr.
end.
Chairman,
Oh,
Mr.
go
Chairman,
ahead.
I did push the button to go live, so I wanted to let everybody know we are live now.
Okay, thank you. All right, committee will call the meeting back to order. We are on autonomous vehicles. And we're kind of in, I think towards the end of that conversation, but I'm not real sure of that right now. I think there are more questions to be asked and answered. Representative Olson shared his thoughts on getting a little ways ahead with some of this new technology. I think a lot of us have concerns about it, and we well should, except when I get out on 85, I'm thinking it'd probably be just as well that all of the vehicles were autonomous, because there are some really crazy drivers out there, and I kind of think maybe the roads would be safer if nobody was actually controlling the vehicle, if it was done by me, but not quite ready to let go of that. And I think as time goes on, the testing and everything, the machines will, I don't know if they'll take over. A lot of us like to drive, but anyway, let's continue the conversation and ask other questions that you might have before we get into the bill and make changes.
Mr. Chairman, do we have public comment?
Well, I'm not sure. Mary Beth, do we have anyone on deck?
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do. We have Marcia Allen, Sheila Furtich, and Josh Fisher, and I believe they were all present. So we might start with Marcia.
Go ahead, and when you're ready, Marcia.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Can you hear me all okay?
Yep.
Marcia Allen with the Wyoming Automobile Dealers Association. And really, I don't have a lot to add to the conversation. I was a member of the working group and provided recommendations and participated in the review of the bill that's in front of you. And really, I'm just here to answer any questions should the committee have any of us for our perspective of the bill.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the dealers. Do we have any electric car dealers in the state yet? We had quite a go around with one of them a couple of years ago, and I didn't know if we had any actual dealerships for electric cars yet.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, actually, many of the dealers that are members have electric vehicle options. Chevrolet, GM, they're not specifically electric vehicle dealer, but they do have options from their manufacturers that they represent.
Well, I have a question. It's not just electric vehicles that could be autonomous, is it?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Eklund, I don't think that they are, but because that's how many of the manufacturers, and perhaps a manufacturer representative would be better to answer that question. But as you've heard, that is the future, and autonomy and EV probably will go hand in hand, but I can't answer that question.
Can anybody answer that question? Will there be gasoline engines that are computer driven?
Mr. Chairman, this is Josh Fisher. I'm with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. We
Welcome.
represent, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. We represent vehicle manufacturers. And so the question is probably a bit more detailed and needs to be broken out. It depends what level of automation we're talking about. There's currently level 1 and 2 vehicles on the road today that are gas powered. But the future of the industry is electric, right? There are going to be more and more electric vehicles, and the computing power for the highly automated vehicles are going to require a significant amount of electricity. So the expectation is that most vehicles in the future will be electric. That doesn't mean that the gasoline engine is going away. So there's not one answer, but that's the expectation, is that in the future, most vehicles will be electrified, and the automated vehicle technology is going to require that type of power from the vehicle.
Okay. Are there others that other public testimony?
Mr. Chairman, there is, I believe, Sheila Furtich and Catherine Wilkinson.
Sheila, how about we go with you first? Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity. Sheila Furch with the Wyoming Trucking Association. As I testified previously when you began your discussions about the autonomous vehicle legislation, I am certainly not the expert on AV, but I have relied heavily on my colleagues in other states that have gone through this process with either implementing pilot programs or legislation that deals with autonomous vehicles. I've also become active with the American Trucking Association's Autonomous Vehicle Subcommittee, where they have actual commercial carriers as well as manufacturers. I have been sending them copies of the working drafts as we've progressed on that and asked for their input. I appreciate being a member of the working group and being able to vet some of those questions that ATA had and the responses that we were able to garner from Mr. Kirkmeyer. So I'd be happy to stand for questions as well.
Questions for Ms. Furtich? Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Now we've got another one here somewhere. Go ahead.
Catherine Wilkinson.
Oh, Catherine. Yes. Catherine, where are you at?
Right here, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Catherine Wilkinson, again, representing American Property Casualty Insurance Association, here to stand in support of the bill. We do have a few minor amendments that we would propose on behalf of the insurance industry. On page 6 of the bill, with regard to the staff comment about deleting paragraph XII, we would recommend that you do delete it and then keep the newly amended 3121-106 section that has been added onto page 13. We do not believe that you should be meshing the law with the TNCs, the Transportation Network Company laws, as well as taxi laws. AVs are a different animal, and so they should have a standalone provision defining them as such. And so we would be in support of that staff comment of deleting XI again on page 6, line 12, and keeping the section on page 13 of 3121-106. Also, Mr. Chairman, there was an earlier question in regard to liability. On page 11, we would recommend that you add a $5 million liability insurance for system manufacturers. That is the most common that is used in the other states that we have seen. And Mr. Chairman, just lastly to clarify, we are fine with the county treasurers verifying the insurance during the registration process. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Chairman Von Flatern, go.
So Catherine, you're saying that the manufacturers should carry that, or the autonomous vehicles should carry that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the clarification. The autonomous vehicle, so there should be some for the individual bill, which is fine with if an individual is driving it with a liability insurance. It's my understanding that there needs to be a separate insurance liability of $5 million for system manufacturers of the autonomous vehicles.
Mr. Chairman, if I can follow up.
Go ahead.
Would that be in a separate area, Catherine? I don't even know myself, but could it be in an area that would be, because this statute doesn't pertain to manufacturers, it pertains to operators.
Mr. Chairman, I am not sure. I would have to run through this in an, I do think that at least according to the review that I received back from clients, that would be the location that was recommended, that insurance level go in. I can run that by them again, so I don't have a direct answer for you, but I can follow up with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Chairman.
was wondering about, so you're good with insurance, liability insurance for the operator. So if an individual owns the vehicle, they would only have liability coverage, right? Or liability or collision and liability coverage per their task that they're doing. But you're talking about a commercial operator having, or somebody else having a liability insurance bond that is $1 million. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, 5 million for the system manufacturing, and I believe
Manufacturer. Let's specify that. How about the operator?
the operator, it's my understanding that the 1 million that is listed currently in the bill is okay, but it needs to be specified a separate provision for system manufacturers at 5 million.
Okay, we're not doing, okay, fine.
Don't have that. Okay, so I believe we don't have that in the bill then right now, correct?
Mr. Chairman, and where would that go?
Probably on page 11. My guess is page 11, right after we get with the primary automobile liability insurance, Romanet I. We'd fit it in somewhere in there.
No, Mr.
Heather, help us. Yeah. Oh, Mr.
This-
Coach, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is operators only. This is not manufacturers. And I think that is different.
Oh, dear. Heather, go ahead. Help me.
You're muted, Heather.
Muted.
Sorry. Subsection A is indeed about devoted to operators, so it would most likely be a new subsection B that, and it would go in to see in statute how other, I just want to make sure that the terminology is correct. System manufacturers or just even manufacturers, which I think might have been a defined term earlier, but we can clarify the specificity, but you're talking about the people who manufacture the vehicle, I believe. And Mr. Chairman, I also was confused. I know it hasn't been exactly proposed as an amendment, but I'm just confused by something that Ms. Wilkinson said, which was to delete the definition of an on-demand autonomous vehicle network, but yet keep the section about an autonomous vehicle network. And so I wondered how there would be a definition of what it was. That is the only question.
Go ahead, Ms. Wilkinson. Go ahead and explain what you wanted there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe, no, we need to keep the definition. If I misspoke, I apologize. We need to keep the definition of the on-demand autonomous vehicle network. That just needs to be separate and then meshed into the TNC and taxi laws. It should be treated as its own separate creature. So if I misspoke on that, my apologies.
Okay. That clear that up, Heather?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, are there further questions? Yes, Mr. Fisher, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions, but I did have some additional comments about the bill that I want to make sure I can address after these questions on this particular issue.
I believe you're up. Go ahead and share with us.
All right, great. Well, thanks again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name's Josh Fisher, and I'm the Director of State Affairs for the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. And I want to thank the committee again for the opportunity to testify today. Just for a little bit more background, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation represents the vehicle manufacturers that produce about 99% of all cars and light trucks sold in the US. And we also represent technology companies involved in the development of AV technology. So we appreciate the constructive dialogue we've had with WYDOT staff and their willingness to listen and discuss our concerns with some previous drafts. And while we agree with many of the provisions in the bill, there are some remaining issues that still need to be addressed. And there are two key issues I want to highlight today. These two issues, along with a handful of other concerns in the current draft, could serve as potential roadblocks to testing and deployment of AVs with automated driving systems in Wyoming. So the two primary issues I want to highlight today are as follows. The first one is about the testing provisions. The bill would create a procedure for the DOT to issue temporary operating permits for AV testing. The bill doesn't specify anything further about the process, as has been noted earlier. And the application criteria and process for obtaining such a permit are all to be determined by the department. This can create a lot of uncertainty for AV developers and manufacturers who are developing their product development plans, of which on-road testing is a critical component. This approach eliminates potential delays in deploying test vehicles in Wyoming and creates a clear pathway for commercial development. So we'd recommend that if Wyoming is going to set up a testing program, this be structured more as a notification approach, similar to what other states have done, such as the state of Oregon, for example. And that's when a testing entity notifies the state about the when, where, how they will be testing, rather than having to apply to get a permit and all that goes along with it while waiting for the rules to be developed about the permit process. So the second provision I want to highlight is related to the ADS data recorder. So essentially, vehicle design and construction and performance requirements and motor vehicle safety is all within the purview of the federal government, not the states. For all vehicles, including AVs, NHTSA has purview over design, construction, or performance of a motor vehicle or motor vehicle equipment. However, the draft bill requires an ADS data recorder, which falls squarely within NHTSA's purview. We propose that this vehicle design requirement be stricken. Further, as the language is worded, the bill would require companies to make the ADS data recorder available to law enforcement without going through any sort of process, such as a subpoena, which is currently required for conventional vehicles. AVs should be treated similarly to non-AVs with respect to how vehicle data is shared as part of a crash investigation. So auto innovators and our members are committed to working with law enforcement and first responders in the event of a crash, but this provision is not necessary to ensure that the relevant information that will be shared and creates a blanket requirement that skirts around existing processes for conventional vehicles. So again, I appreciate the consideration the committee is giving to our comments today and welcome the opportunity to provide any additional information that could prove useful and answer any questions. And we do have some suggested language that we can share on these issues. So thanks again.
Okay, committee questions? I guess I'd have one for Colonel Haller concerning the safety issues and the oh gosh, the security issues and what have you. That's in the bill. We're requiring the AV. I'm trying to remember just how it was worded, requiring that the AV users provide information that we're not requiring of the other road users.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. And listening to Mr. Josh Fisher's testimony, I believe he is correct. Currently, there is electronic data systems and vehicles in the last 10 or 15 years that we do collect anytime a vehicle is involved, and certainly a fatality and sometimes major crashes. This information is what the vehicle was doing or not doing right before the crash, at the time of the crash, and a short time afterwards. Having said that, it is standard procedure legally to obtain a search warrant for that information. So I certainly have no concerns with maintaining that moving forward with autonomous vehicles and keeping that in line with where we are currently at today.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you. This would be a question for Colonel Haller. So the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, obviously that is, by putting the person in there, that is a right that was guaranteed by the Constitution for human beings, for American citizens. Has that been extended by any court that you're aware of to robots or to computers or anything like that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, again, another very good question. I am not aware of the case law, and I'm also proud to say I'm not an attorney. Having said that, I am not aware of that privilege being extended beyond those of humans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Okay, is there any further public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anyone else on my list.
Okay. All right. So committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Bill's been moved by Chairman Von Flatern, second.
Second.
Second by Blake, Representative Blake. So I'm hoping some of you were quicker at writing down these possible changes, some deletions and some additions and what have you. I'm gonna, Heather, you might be on deck to help us with some of that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am here.
Okay, because we had concerns with the insurance industry, and I don't know where most of that goes. So are there any changes on page 1?
And Mr. Chairman, I do have a
McGuire, go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. This would be kind of a big change, and that would be to turn the bill into a 2-year study bill, where the manufacturers would provide notification to YDOT, and then YDOT would work with them. It would include a 2-year sunset for the bill, and that's so that at the end of 2 years, the legislature can come back and make changes as are deemed appropriate, because as everybody has said right in this in testimony, the technology is changing so fast, we have no idea where it's going. So why don't we let YDOT look at it for 2 years, give YDOT the authority to make changes by rule and reg to accommodate the manufacturers, and we come back in 2 years and take a look at it. And the last part of that amendment would be that the LSO would make the conforming changes to all provisions of the bill to make it a 2-year study bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So that's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Senator Hutchings seconded it. Let's go ahead and have some discussion on that. Representative Obermuller, go ahead. Or was that a second?
That was a second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We, just so you're aware of what's going on here, I've got still lifes of all of you. So whatever you were doing about 15 seconds ago is what I generally see on the screen here. That's how good my internet is, even with the phone as a hotspot. So speaking up is the best way to get my attention.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Chairman Von Flatern.
I think this bill is ready, and it may need some more adapting as we go along, and we can always bring it back in another time. But I really think this bill is ready to go. And we had set it up as 2 years, but the Yellowstone project came up and we said, no, we got to do it this year. So we have this bill, and it is covering everything that other states have covered. And so I really think it's ready for prime time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I want to agree with Senator Von Flatern. This is ready to go. We're ready to do it. There's lots of manufacturers ready to do this. And I think we need to give, like the bill does, give the state YDOT time to form all the rules and get ready. But this is coming faster than we think. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Representative Brown.
I'm just going to echo the sentiments, but with a slightly different caveat here. While I recognize the trepidation of jumping into this feet first, the way that we're looking at doing this, what I hear constantly, especially over the past 6-7 months of campaigning, is we need new businesses. We need new industry. We need to diversify our economy. We've got to do something in this state. And here we have the opportunity to do that. It is the bleeding edge, as I heard somebody say yesterday. This is the bleeding edge. But I'd rather be on that than have the opportunity of going, man, I wish we could have attracted these companies, 5-10 years ago. And we have that opportunity right now. And I think this bill certainly has some work to be done to it. But for the most part, it's a solid bill, and I trust the subcommittee that worked this out, and they heard a lot of testimony beyond what we did today as well. So I would urge caution against this particular amendment, and hope that we can support this bill and move it forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative McGuire.
Speaking in favor of the amendment, so this would in no way restrict companies from coming into the state of Wyoming to do business. It wouldn't restrict the Yellowstone Company or anything else. What it does is putting a 2-year mandatory review on it. Is how many times have we heard, oh yeah, this bill is ready, we'll make changes. But then when it comes time to make those changes, how difficult is it to actually make those changes? And are we going to end up with statutes in the green books that we regret having and that we don't make changes? I think that it's incumbent upon us. Technology is changing so fast that we should mandatorily review this bill in 2 years, because there are going to be things that nobody thought about. One of them is the law enforcement provisions. What happens when vehicles are not acting the way that they're supposed to act? Insurance provisions. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and jumping in feet first, I think the saying is that good legislation evolves, and it's an evolutionary process. And I think that that's what we should be doing in this state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, oops.
Chairman Von Frieden, you go first.
Technology is changing so fast that if we look at it in 2 years, that's what we need to do. But we need to pass this legislation because technology is moving that quickly. And so we need to start with something, and this is it.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo what Representative McGuire says. And if we don't, I plan to vote no for this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I guess I'd like some clarity on it. Representative McGuire, are you suggesting that we hold up on this bill and study it for 2 years? Or are you suggesting that in 2 years we review the legislation that we've passed? Because I heard two different things, maybe I misunderstood. But I think
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I didn't make myself clear. Yeah, pass the bill, but put a 2-year sunset in it so that we have to come back and review it.
Okay.
That's Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
That's not what I heard, but that's fine. I agree with Representative McGuire that we should pass this bill and to say 2 years later, we're going to review it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would ask Heather on this, what the motion was, because the motion was certainly not for a review in 2 years. The motion that I heard was to study this for 2 years. And I just want to make sure that we certainly need to stick to our principles here as a governing body, that our motions are not what we want them to be, it's what we say. And so I'd like to check back in with our legal counsel here and find out what the motion was, so we actually know what we're voting on, because what I heard and what the co-chairman heard is two totally different things from what's being proposed right now.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment that I recorded was to change this bill to a 2-year study of the a study of the things that are in the bill with a 2-year sunset.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and that's what I seconded. Thank you.
And that's not what I heard, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
it's not the second thing, it's the first one. Thank you.
That's not what I heard. So not the second time around.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think what we need to do is if that's what Representative McGuire is interested in doing, is having us pass this bill and have a 2-year sunset, we need to dispose of the motion on the table, which is a 2-year study. We need to dispose of that one way or the other, and then we need to bring another motion forward if that's the case, to actually have the correct motion brought forward of a 2-year sunset.
Okay, Representative McGuire, would you agree to that, to pull your motion and then make another motion for a 2-year sunset? I
Yes.
think that.
Yes,
we
Mr.
need
Chairman,
that.
I'd be happy to do that.
Mr. Chairman, then I pull my second. Thank you.
Okay. So let's have another motion. Senator, or Representative McGuire, you go ahead and make the motion that to clear this up, which would be a 2-year sunset. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, 2-year sunset.
Revisit.
We'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I need some clarification on that idea, if that's going to be applied to this bill. If you would, in section 3 on page 21, the provisions of this act don't even become effective until January of 2022. So does that mean to pass the bill and do what's in it, but then in January or at some point of 2024, everything that has been done sunsets? So for example, a subsection C, or well, I don't know where it would go. I don't want to do that on the fly, but is that the 2-year time frame that is envisioned with this amendment proposal?
Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My motion would be to make the bill effective typically in July of 2021, and then to have it sunset in July of 2023.
Okay.
It would be a 2-year bill, and it would come back during the next general, the next general session.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. I just need one more piece of clarification, Mr. Chairman. The reason there's this split effective date at the moment is because there is some rule promulgation. So the way that works is the rule promulgation part is effective immediately so that the department can get going on making rules. And then those rules kick into gear. So if I'm understanding that perhaps if I can state this properly, it would still kick into gear the rulemaking immediately. The department would need to make rules by July 1st, 2021. And then the sunset would be for July 1st, 2023. Is that correct?
And Mr. Chairman, and a question that I had, does the department have to have the rules in place before the statute becomes effective? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, typically, if there are things that need to be enacted, we do the split effective date so that there is a bit of lead time before something is suddenly available, and then whatever agency doesn't have the framework in place to actually deal with it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just go with the sticking with the 2021 and let YDOT. I guess I thought that YDOT would be able to continue to promulgate rules as they needed. But I would just say I think that it should become effective in July of 2021 with a 2-year sunset. Thank you.
Okay, I think they can. Heather, the YDOT can start promulgating rules after it's passed before it becomes effective. And maybe if I'm mistaken, I think they have to have those rules in place.
Mr. Chairman, we can do whatever you wish.
Okay.
They typically my understanding from an attorney general opinion and the way that the practice is that an agency cannot start doing something until they cannot move on a bill until the bill's effective. So whatever the effective date is when they can start, just like anyone else can do something. So it's not as though they would be working in the background before this bill is effective, unless they were told to do that, and unless that part was made effective. That's why we typically do the split effective dates.
So I think Representative McGuire's idea of, well, let me see here. We've got January 1st, 2021. Is that supposed to be that, or is it supposed to be July?
It's January 1st of 2022, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, 2022. Okay. Now I see what we,
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm confused now. We have said so many dates and so many different things. If I could have Representative McGuire just restate what his motion is and what his anticipated, what he's attempting to do here, whether it's pushing things forward or back, or what the 2-year time frame. I'm confused beyond all get out now.
Mr. Chairman, so am I. So could we have Representative McGuire please state his motion again?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll have to confess that I'm confused also.
okay.
I would propose that the bill become effective in July of 2021, and that there be a 2-year sunset, and in between that time that the department can begin their rulemaking. And I guess one of the things that I would want to make sure of is that they have the ability to continue to make rules and regs during the 2-year period that this bill is in effect, so that if there is a problem that people hadn't anticipated, that they would be able to address it through rule and reg, which that would be, I think, the ideal scenario. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I need to, there's 2 effective dates that are currently in this bill. And one of them is immediately. One of them allows the portion of the basically all the rulemaking to start immediately. It doesn't sound to me like we're interested in actually delaying that at all. What we're talking about is Section 1, which would be effective January 1st, 2022. Section 1 is ultimately the heart of the bill. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Heather, but so if I'm understanding what you're trying to do, Representative McGuire, is trying to get, really what you're trying to do is have the bill become effective immediately to where they can start drafting rules, do everything they need to do, have the actual bill become law effective July 1st, and then in 2 years, we need to come back and have a review of this. Otherwise, the bill and all the statute disappears. Do I have that right?
I'll go with that. Let's see if that works.
Mr. Chairman, Heather, do you understand that now? I think we're starting to get some of the cats rounded up here.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, he still needs a second.
Pardon?
He still needs a second on that.
Okay, it looks like, Mr. Chairman, I know, I see
Representative Frank
Representative
seconded.
Frank had a second on that.
Yes, he did have a second. So any further discussion on this? We lost Representative Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to vote against this amendment because those of you who are coming back next interim or in 2 years, you can look at this. If it's not working, we can change it. We can tweak it. But the autonomous vehicles coming down the road, and we need to get this in place. And when you put a sunset clause in there, that's going to give manufacturers and everybody else a pause and think, are they really interested in this or not? So I'm just going to be a no vote on this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? We lost Chairman Eklund, but we're hoping he comes back.
Am I back?
We have a amendment on the floor and a second. And if there's no other discussion, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand in front of your camera. 3. Senator Hutchings?
I'm a no, sir.
3 votes. Okay, 4 votes. All right. So they go away. So that's next amendment. It has to do on,
Did we take the no votes, Mr. Chairman?
oh, no votes. Sorry. There's 2, 4,
No.
7 no votes. At least this is what I counted.
Thank you.
Okay, on page 10, I expected to be a regular member of this, but Eklund is, oh, there he is. Co-Chairman Eklund, are you back?
I'm back. There for a while because this is kicked on and off 3-4 times. So I'll you go ahead.
Okay, cool. On page 10, pardon me, Senator Hutchings.
I'm sorry, sir. I made a joke. He needs to come hang out with me. I have excellent internet.
I know that you do. So on page 10, we're going to, on line 7, the period should go at the end of laws or motor vehicle laws, and the rest of that sentence should be removed. And the automated driving system may satisfy electronically all physical assets required by a driver of vehicle. And then remove 16 through 19. So do I have a second on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm just to make sure I heard you correctly. I know that the recommendation was some other language in the staff comment, but rather than keeping any of it, you want it all gone for paragraph 2?
Yes. 16 through 19 page or line 16 through 19. Do I have a second on that? Died for lack of second.
I'll second it.
Second. Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make an attempt at that same one on page 10, line 7, at the end of laws, a period, and then strike the rest of 7, 8, and 9, but nothing else.
So do I consider that a friendly amendment?
I don't know.
I do consider that a friendly amendment, sir. So you're good on that, Senator Anderson.
All right, thank you.
So the question is line 7 or motor vehicle laws, period. And the automated driving system may satisfy electronically all physical acts required by a driver of the vehicle. That will be deleted. The and will be included. and the automatic driving system is considered. So that stays, 16 through 19 stays. The end of 7, 8, 9 goes away.
Right.
Okay.
Representative McGuire has a question.
Oh, Senator McGuire, representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would that do away with all CDL requirements and or training for hazmat and any other type of special hauling or special handling that people would have to have?
It would take care of the vehicle. It doesn't have anything to do with the driver.
Follow-up question, Mr.
You could
Chairman?
train the vehicle if you'd like.
Well, I do have a follow-up question then, Mr. Chairman. So does that mean that if you have a company that's hauling liquid oxygen, they can have a 16-year-old that's running the computer that is operating that vehicle with absolutely no training with regard to the product that they're hauling or special handling?
That has to be worked out in rules and regulations, Representative McGuire.
Only if he's hauling ag products.
That's right. And he gets a function.
Mr. Chairman, I think I might have Mr. Chairman, I think I may have the amendment wrong based on Representative McGuire's question. I thought that the amendment is focused now only on paragraph 1.
Yes, it is.
So it does not involve paragraph 2 that
No,
requires
it
the
doesn't.
licensed driver.
Correct.
Okay.
Further comments? All in favor of the amendment to strike the an automated driving system, blah, 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 8, 9, please raise your hand in front of your camera. 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. All opposed? Raise your hand. All opposed? 1. 1 abstention. No, 2. 2. That's all I count. So that amendment passed.
Mr. Chairman, I think it was 9 raised 4, and I think I counted 2 with several abstentions. No? Okay.
I don't have everybody on the screen.
Okay.
All right, thank you. On the insurance, which is 3121-104, which is right below, it's on page 11.
Kevin? I have a
Yes,
motion.
Senator Henderson.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose that we go to page 16 and 17, paragraph, and make a new paragraph D. That section 3121-108 is controlling authority, rights, and obligations of manufacturers. And I would propose that new paragraph D says that the system manufacturer has $5 million of liability insurance in place. I'm sure there's some more words to that the LSO can throw in there, but I think that's where it belongs.
I agree. So I have a second. Second for Representative Crank. Any further conversation about inserting a D in page 17, on page 17 for $5 million for the manufacturer's liability? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question about that.
Yes, Representative McGuire.
And I would just point out, so if the manufacturer has to have liability insurance, does that mean that if a operating company buys XYZ vehicle and it's involved in an accident in the state of Wyoming, that automatically people can go back against the manufacturer? Because that changes our normal insurance procedure quite a bit. Typically, if you buy a piece of equipment, then you accept that liability unless there's gross negligence by the manufacturer.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman, there's a section of the bill, Mr. Chairman, that says that liability shall be determined, liability of the manufacturer, of the driver, of the all the people shall be determined according to the way that they are currently determined. So that would, that section of the bill, which I'm just looking for, would keep it the way that Representative McGuire was referring to.
So Representative McGuire, you crash an airplane and you sue Beechcraft or you sue Textron, you don't stop at the guy that sold you the airplane. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. And so you can always sue General Motors if you really want to sue General Motors.
Mr. Chairman, I think all this motion is doing is establishing the amount of liability insurance they have, how it operates and all that is covered under other statutes.
Yes, exactly. So any other comments on manufacturing 5 million on page 17? If not, all in favor, please raise your hand in front of your cameras. 7, 6, 7, 8, 9. Senator Hutchings,
Yes, sir.
are you a yes?
Yes.
10, 11, 11. All those opposed? I got 11. I don't know what you had, Heather, but it passed.
Mr. Chairman, I counted 13, but it is kind of a flowing thing.
Okay, I was going back to page 13. The page 13, line 4, the information from an automated driving system data recorder. I was going to scratch data recorder. The information from an automated driving system shall be accessible to law enforcement in relation to a crash, traffic violation, or any other circumstances wherein law enforcement would obtain with a human driver operating a vehicle. So I would scratch data recorder on line 5 and I'd put in obtain from Interact on line 7.
Mr. Chairman, may I read that back?
Please do.
I also have one other question. Throughout this bill, it's referred to as a vehicle equipped with an automated driving system. Might that be a friendly, like LSO thing at the beginning? The information from a vehicle equipped with an automated driving system shall be accessible to law enforcement in relation to a crash, traffic violation, or any other circumstance wherein law enforcement would obtain the information with a human driver, or sorry, I don't know, a human driver operating a vehicle who is subject to those statutes.
That makes perfect sense. So it'd be the information from a vehicle equipped. So mine would be vehicle equipped and data recorder and obtain for Interact. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what I was thinking with the 31-5-1009. That should be 1108 in line 9. Very weird.
So that should be Wyoming statute 31-5-1108.
Yes, those are the statutes for accident.
Okay. You can change that easily enough. So I have a second and a motion. Any questions, any thoughts? Representative McGuire? You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So presumably, since federal law still applies in the state of Wyoming, presumably the NTSB would be able to come in and access the data recorder. Does that mean that the NTSB gets the data and they would not be able to share it with Wyoming law enforcement? I simply don't understand why we would not want Wyoming law enforcement to be able to access the data that's involved with a crash or an accident or a traffic violation. How is that in any way, shape, or form going to, I don't know, infringe on the manufacturer?
Because they have to, at this point, the data recorder is proprietary And I think even Kevin Haller told us earlier that they need to go to court to get certain parts. And if Mr. Haller is there, I'd appreciate him coming on to get certain information from the mechanical aspect of it. So they have to get a court-ordered subpoena. Mr. Haller?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that is correct.
So you would have to get it from the court to get a data recorder to allow you to look at the information on data recorder.
Mr. Chairman, to obtain the information as to what the vehicle had been performing and then recorded on that data recorder, it would require a court order or subpoena.
Okay, thank you. So I am eliminating data recorder from that information. So, and I had a second. Is there any other further comments on this? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Representative Newsom had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't see her.
I guess I'm just wondering what information would be available that it would not be on a data recorder. I'm a little confused as to what information would then be available to law enforcement if it's not the data recorder.
Mr. Haller, will you answer that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Newsom, if we're talking about a fully autonomous vehicle, then all of the information would be expected to be on that device, such as how fast the vehicle was going. Did it take a movement and avert an object to the right or left? Was there any braking? And that would actually be retrieved just prior to the crash, during the crash, and then a short time after the crash. And that is standard with vehicles that do have electronic devices installed in them now that are not necessarily autonomous.
So if we delete the data recorder as part of the information that would be obtained, it seems like the only thing that would be obtained is whatever body damage is done to the vehicle or to another vehicle that was part of a crash situation. And none of that information that has to do with speed or whatever would be accessible to law enforcement.
That is correct. But they need to, other than the other person saying they, didn't stop at a stop sign or something of this nature and hit me. But the data recorder is proprietary. And today they do go to the courts to get a subpoena to look at the information that is apparently on the data recorder inside your vehicle.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This kind of touches back on base with Representative McGuire. I think the extension of constitutional rights to robots is probably not the way that we should be looking at this, but it is something that he brought up and it kind of got me thinking about it. What about the people who are not driving this, but actually own the vehicle? Are they going to claim the unconstitutionality of that, that device when nobody was actually driving? Can they claim anything like that? And going back on that, it's something, I don't know that we can hash that out here. I think that's something that'll end up being litigated, but I do worry about that and whether or not a company can utilize that as a self-incrimination mechanism, and fight something like that when there's actually no person involved. So just kind of some thoughts on that, and something that Representative McGuire brought that up and it kind of got my gears turning.
The self-incrimination aspect of it, I see that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Hutchings.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm in the same boat as Representative Newsom. Why would we want to remove the data recorder from this sentence? Why not keep it, even if you have to have a subpoena to get the information?
Because the data recorder would have the information and they have to go to the courts to get it. today even, they have to go to the courts to get the mechanical or the aspects of the data recorder off your vehicle. So I was going to leave it the same.
Mr. Chairman, like the black box on a plane, is that a bad thing that they have to go to the courts to get it?
No, I don't think it is. Plus, there's some proprietary. Yes, Mr. Kevin Colonel Howler.
Senator Von Flattern, members of the committee. No, we do not look at this as a burdensome process. This would be very similar to searching somebody's computer. There is information on that device, just as there would be on an ADS or a black box. And as a result, we are covering our bases legally to be able to utilize that information for prosecution in criminal court. And so it is standard procedure, and we would perform that moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sure it's the same in the airline industry, but the railroad industry has data recorders. And of course, the railroad has access to that. If it's a bad crash, the NTSB and the Federal Railroad Administration have access to it. But in a lawsuit, let's say some crew members were killed, and you want to find out if it was a signal was wrong or whatever happened, you have to subpoena the railroad for that. But usually the NTSB will release not proprietary things, but the cause of the accident. It usually takes 1.5 to 2 years to get that out. But I'm in favor of this amendment right here.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Ms. Jarvis.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted, the way this is, the amendment is that this is just information that is accessible, and it's not speaking to the types of information that you're describing that would a person would go to, that law enforcement would go to get the, or would get a warrant. This is just simply saying other information about the crash. That's what your amendment would do. I believe, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So any other questions, comments? All in favor of the amendment to add, to delete data recorder, please signal by raising your hand in front of your cameras. 5, 6. You count 6, Heather?
No, Mr. Chairman, I count 8.
8. All those opposed, please raise their hand. Opposed. 1.
I'm opposed.
2, 3, 4, 5. Do I have 5? That passed. 8 to 5. And the final amendment is on page 19. Okay, temporary ADs ADS operating permits. I see permits, operating permits. You've gone through all this above, and you get to this point where it says operating permits, and you go, why should I get an operating permit, temporary permit, if I meet everything above? So the department may develop procedures and issue temporary operating permits for demonstration or testing in the state of vehicles equipped with an ADS, period, that do not meet the requirements of the article of this article. So the new sentence would be that do not meet the requirements of this article. I have a second on that.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second, Anderson. So questions, comments?
Instead of article, would section sound better or no?
I think it's the article is this whole section of the whole, several sections of this article.
Okay.
Representative Crank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you repeat what the proposed amendment is?
Okay, on line 6 of page 19 of vehicles equipped with an ADS period that do not meet the requirements of this article. Yeah, that do not meet the requirements of this article. And then the permit shall be issued for the purpose of testing or demonstrating the use of such vehicles. So basically it says that do not meet the requirements of this article. And you can either comma that or period that, I don't know. That'll be up to Ms. Jarvis. Yes, Ms. Jarvis.
Mr. Chairman, so it goes, so vehicles equipped with an ADS that do not meet the requirements of this article, is that, so it
Right.
goes right before that period, is that correct?
Yes. You could comma, vehicles equipped with an ADS, comma, that do not meet the requirements of this article, period.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay not to have a comma? Is it okay with you not to have a comma? Because when we use that, we don't have.
Yes, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Representative Obermuller.
Yeah, thank you. Could you just explain again what's covered by the word article?
This several sections of this 3121, going back 3121, 109, so forth, 108. They'd all be articles of this section. Further comments, questions?
Imagine.
Question.
Sorry, I didn't hear. Ms. Jarvis?
Part of it.
I just called
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted, by way of clarification, I was just going to let folks know that, so when there's a bill section, it's the title, and then the chapter, and then the article. So that's why it refers to this article, because it's all of them that are encompassed in that whole article.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Seeing none. All in favor of this amendment, please raise their hand in front of the camera. I see 7. Is that correct, Heather?
Mr. Chairman, I see 10, however, maybe 11.
Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't see them all. Does anybody else have any amendments to this bill?
Mr. Chairman?
Opposition to
Yes,
that.
Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to page 3, and correct me if I've already dealt with this issue here. But I like the staff comment on page 3 about defining what is not, but I don't like all the wordiness of it. I guess my amendment would be to, within this of defining what ADS is not, is to start on line 9 and go through line 10 for the first 2 words, equipped with, and then drop down to line 14 and start out with the last word, systems, so that the statement would be: a vehicle equipped with an ADS is not a vehicle that is a vehicle equipped with an ADS is not a vehicle that is equipped with systems that enhance safety or provide the human driver assistance, but where the collision avoidance systems are not capable collectively or singularly of driving the vehicle without the active control or monitoring of a human driver. I don't think it's essential, but I think it's helpful language, and I would make that motion for that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second? Second for Representative McGuire. So your motion is a vehicle equipped with an ADS is not a vehicle that is equipped with systems that enhance safety or provide the human driver's assistance, but where blah, blah, blah. So
Correct.
it ends on 10 equipped with systems. I guess I don't need that. Equipped with, and then it goes down to line 14, the very last word, systems.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. It just eliminates all the specific examples, which is, you always leave some out when you do that. So
Okay.
I don't think the examples are necessary. I think the general description of what is not, which is just like this describes, I think it'd be helpful language for readers of the bill. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Do I have any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment to vehicle equipped with on line 10 and then going to systems on line 14, the last word. All in favor, please raise your hand up in front of your camera. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I get 9.
Mr. Chairman, I counted 11, but
11. All opposed, please raise their hand. 1. I get 1.
I'll throw mine in there.
2.
Thank you.
Senator Hutchings, 2. Okay, that passed. Any further amendments on this bill? Seeing none, do you want to call the roll, Mary Beth?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on 21 LSO 12 version 6 as amended. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Hutchings.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
No.
Representative Blake.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Crank.
Aye.
Representative. Thank you. Representative McGuire.
No.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Obermuller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Von Flateren.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that bill passes.
All right. Thank you. Now we're on to farm trucks. Chairman Eklund, do you want to give a short, brief explanation of farm trucks?
Okay. I can. I may get kicked off again. It's kind of stressful. Every time you want to do something, you find yourself out of commission all of a sudden. Thank you for taking over for me. I guess I wanted to explain what I believe is in statute concerning farm trucks. 3-axle farm trucks is where I'm at. So we'll probably do the working group report afterwards. But there are 3 different ways that you can have a farm trucks. One is you can be fully commercial. You'd have the CDLs, you'd keep the logbook requirements, you'd have the licensing of commercial vehicles, they'd be apportioned trailers and everything. And you can go virtually anywhere and you can work for anyone. It doesn't just have to be yourself. Then that's probably one of the more common ways that farm trucks operate is as a commercial trucking operation. And then then when we get into the actual farm regulations, it splits into 2 groups as well. There are farm trucks that are non-commercial. They only haul their own stuff, their own produce and what have you. They can't be for hire. They have to have a CDL, but they can haul anywhere. There's no limit on their hauling. They keep full log compliance and they're licensed commercial, or they can be licensed regular. but they do have to have a CDL. And then the latest level we worked on were the much less used trucks, which they're for full farm use. They have regular driver's licenses. They don't require CDLs. You have to operate within 150 miles of home. The truck can be licensed commercial or regular. No log books or anything are required. Usually these are fairly low mile trucks that only get used for maybe 1,000 miles a year. A lot during beet harvest or wheat harvest and that sort of stuff. So that's what I know about 3-axle trucks. I found out some interesting things as I was trying to research this, and I'll throw it out to the Transportation Committee because I think we're losing a little bit of money on licensing of trailers. The trailers can be licensed virtually anywhere. Your tractor has to be licensed in the state you operate. It's supposed to be. It isn't necessarily, but by law it should be. The trailers, you could get a license for $100 in Idaho, and it would be the last license you'd buy for the truck. And Wyoming's quite a bit different. I know we've got old trailers that we pay $200 a year on every year. So that's why you'll see a lot of trailers that'll be licensed in other states. And I don't know how we can fix that to be able to get some of the revenue from registering trailers. Anyway, any questions? Or could you hear me?
I could hear you fine.
Oh, good.
So do you want to have now the working group to get the group members to get up there, or somebody representing this group? Is Brent around?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I am. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, loud and clear.
Brett Moline with Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. At the meeting earlier this year, there was essentially 2 questions that came out. One of them was, why does Nebraska not recognize Wyoming farm decals on plates to be farm vehicles? The conclusion was that there was nothing statutorily Wyoming could do. It would probably take the director of the Wyoming DOT talking to Nebraska DOT to get that straightened out. If I remember correctly, the Federal Motor Carriers Act says it has to be designated a farm vehicle. In Wyoming, that's a little black and white sticker that goes on your license plate, typically on the front plate, and that's good enough. For some reason, which is unclear, Nebraska does not accept that. They say it has to be a separate plate. But again, we kind of came to the conclusion that there was nothing statutorily Wyoming legislators could do. That would take a discussion either governor to governor, DOT to DOT. With that, Mr. Chairman, is there any questions on that question?
Questions from the committee? Yes, Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett, did you talk to any of the legislators over across the state line? I know I had a discussion with Steve Erdman, who might be willing to run some legislation over there to try to help us fix this problem.
Mr. Chairman, yes, ma'am, we did. I visited with him, and the indication was that there was nothing Wyoming could do statutorily. It had to be done on the Nebraska side.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Steinmetz wanted to follow up.
Yes, that was the point that Steve had mentioned. He might be willing to run something on the Nebraska side. And was he still willing to do that, or have you talked to him lately?
I have not talked to him lately. The indication was I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, through you, not used to this format at all. But Mr. Chairman, the last indication I had, which was earlier this summer, that was his inclination.
Thank you.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
I guess a question I would have probably for Director Reiner or someone with YDOT, how expensive would it be to issue an actual farm plate that didn't have an affixed sticker, but was a plate that had farm written on it like a Nebraska plate? Would that be a tough deal to do? It seems so much easier now because the clerks and the treasurers don't really care. They want their money for the registration. That's what they're interested in. They don't care whether you do it commercially or the regular way. In fact, they'll even help you figure out which is the cheapest and best route to go with each of your vehicles. But I'm wondering if it would be difficult to have special plates or expensive to have special plates for farm vehicles that didn't have stickers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman. Really, from our standpoint, you know, if you want to issue some separate plates, that, you know, it's not hugely more expensive. You know, we're issued a little sticker. We could go with plates. Let me just see if with your permission, what Mr. Rossetti would comment on that in terms of exact cost.
Mr. Rossetti, are you there?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Taylor Rossetti, Support Services here at YDOT. You know, as the director mentions, it would require the legislature to mandate we issue that plate, which would then, of course, take us down that road that this committee is familiar with.
Co-Chairman Eklund, are you going to run a private bill?
No, I don't want any more of these. I think if we can work out a deal between Nebraska, so it is a bit of a problem, but it's only on the Nebraska side. I know people who have been stopped with small pickup trucks, half-ton pickup trucks that have been pulling up a stock trailer behind it, and Highway Patrol wants to see it's got a farm sticker on it. The highway patrolman wants to see log books. So I don't know what to do with it. I think it's just a problem that needs to be worked out between law enforcement, mostly on that side.
Mr. Moline.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to echo those words of the co-chairman. It seemed like the only state we're having trouble with is Nebraska. My members go up to Montana, Colorado, and don't seem to have any problem. The only one I'm hearing about is Nebraska. So my suggestion was what we have works for almost everyone. And rather than going through granted it'd be a small expense, but our stickers work almost everywhere. And maybe we need to just work on fixing the problem with Nebraska. If we don't get that done, then we could come back later in another session and run a bill if we need to.
Okay, that sounds good. So so Nebraska will recognize our farm plates and or stickers. That's what you're going to try, right?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's the inclination that we're going forward with now. Mr. Chairman, I don't think we need to change our system. Let's see if we can change somebody else's.
All right. Good luck on that, Brett.
Well, I might need it, sir. I truly might need it.
Okay. Well, that should conclude the farm truck issue. So now we're on to antique motor vehicles, and that's Representative Brown's.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping we can make some pretty quick work out of this. So I'm just going to dive right on in. You'll all remember that we had this discussion at the last meeting trying to tidy this up. It's been a kind of a pet project of mine for a couple of years now, but took all your considerations, everything that was brought from the last meeting, bringing it forward into this. So I'm just going to jump right into the bill and just go page by page with you. Jumping straight to page 2, we changed the definition of an antique vehicle from 25 to 40 years. This takes it back to the vehicles that are, considered classic and antiques as opposed to the 1985 Ford Mustang that somebody's driving around and could technically license as a antique vehicle. So we changed that from 25 to 40 as opposed to keeping it from manufactured at 1979, which is what I had originally done. Moving on, moving into page 3, I updated the language. There was some requests from some of the committee members to bring this forward to have an annual verification sticker similar to what we do with our other licenses. So that's all this is doing, is making sure that any plates that are issued after July 1st, 2021 have an annual verification sticker. Moving on to page 4. Page 4 here is an antique motor vehicle license plate issued or on shall be valid for the duration of the registered owner's license or ownership if that validation sticker is attached as required to this subsection. Well, it really doesn't make any sense, but really what you're talking about there is just making sure that the motor vehicle license plate, if it's after 2021, it has to have that annual sticker on there. If they don't have it, if it's after or if it's before that, they don't have to have that sticker. They're kind of in a grandfathered clause. The next page, page 5, is a little bit of a difference here. And so you'll notice on page 6, it actually has a staff comment, and I'll explain what that is. Subsection B 1 and 2 will not appear, 1, 2, and 3 will not appear when the actual bill draft comes through. This is to just help illustrate what we're actually doing here. But what we're actually doing on this particular bill or on this particular section is making sure that they're only allowed to get the antique motor vehicle plate if they meet these criteria. And so the stuff that's already in statute is 1, 2, and 3. We're adding the fact that they have to have an annual verification. That's on line 12. And then you flip over to page 6, which is where subsection 4 and 5 come in. This was the request that we make sure that they're covered by liability insurance for number 4. And then number 5, making sure that there was an affidavit signed with the owner at the time of registration. Again, those will be just added to the list of requirements for these particular vehicles when they are licensed. And then page 6, just going into the annual fee again. Page 7, this was the request that was brought up. And again, I truthfully don't care one way or the other, but the number that stuck with Ms. Jarvis and I that we had heard at least a few times was $50 for an annual verification and an annual or the original initial license plate and the verification sticker. And then the definition in this, again, just going back after the 25 to 40 years, making this a little bit older. And then the section 2 here is a slight grandfather clause, if you will. Section 2 basically says that if they have vehicles that were already licensed that are 25 or older, they get to keep those. We're not going to kick anybody to the curb that already has those. However, if they sell that vehicle or that vehicle is retitled or reissued any type of registration, they would then be subject to this new act. So this would give, depending upon when we meet, this would basically give them a few months to go register those vehicles that are 25 years or older, and that are only used for the use of parades and car shows, stuff like that. They could still go get that done and pay $10 one time and they're done. But the second that they decide to sell that car and it gets relicensed, it would then become $50 for a license plate, and it would be $50 every year thereafter. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the bill, and I'll stand for any more questions.
Questions in the committee, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Brown, can you go back to page 5 and more clearly explain all of what you said? Because I had some questions about letter B and 1, 2, and 3. So if you could go back over that again, that'd be helpful.
Certainly. So page 5 is existing statute. And if you look over on page 6, there's a staff comment on lines 10 through 15 that says paragraphs B 1 through 3 above are included for the committee's information and will not appear in the formal draft. Those are already existing statutes. Those are already what we require out of people who license antique vehicles. So they are just being put into this just to help illustrate what is required for an antique vehicle to get this Pioneer plate. What this ultimately does, 1, 2, and 3 are already in statute. They just put this in here for our edification. When the actual bill draft comes out, if it's sponsored by the committee, it will not have 1, 2, and 3 in there. It will only have the new language of 4 and 5.
But it will have B.
It will have
I'm
B.
sorry.
Yes, it will have B. It will just have B4, B5. It will not show 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so my question is, what if I've had this car sitting in my barn for 40 years and I want to register it, but I should have done that within 10 days from the date of acquisition?
None of that changes. That's technically, if you're not driving the vehicle, you have no reason to license it. If you're not planning on licensing it to use for anything. So if it's been sitting in your barn for 40 years and you haven't driven it on roads, that would be no different than what it is today. We have not adjusted any of the existing statute at this point.
So
That
what
answers
if,
the question, Representative Newsom.
Yeah.
thank you. So what if I have been driving this car, like my husband's 1976 four-wheel drive van, and now he wants to register it as an antique?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Representative Newsom, what would be required at that point? There's no difference in what they would be here, except you would be required to carry liability insurance, just like any other vehicle driving along the road. And the signature, you'd have to sign an affidavit declaring that this is to be used only for car shows, anything like that. So basically, this was at the request of the committee to make sure that when you're licensing with one of these antique vehicle plates, that you would be signing knowing that when you sign up for this, you know exactly what you're signing up for. It's not you just go and pay the $10, get the plate, and then you can drive around on it.
Representative Brown, you do not have to get the plate. You could just use a regular plate and use it every day.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Co-Chairman Eklund, do you have a question?
Yeah, if you pulled a vehicle out of the barn that you hadn't been using for 20 years, and hadn't licensed for 20 years, I think you'd have to pay the back taxes or registrations on that for 20 years, unless you transfer it to somebody else.
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that's correct. I will double check with that, but I believe if you have a vehicle that has been sitting parked and has not been on public roads, you are not required to license it, and you are not required to pay back registration on that.
Okay, that would be good.
Mr. Chairman, that might be different with different counties, but I know 2 counties that would require you to pay back every year of the taxes that you were in arrears. Now, maybe there's some counties that don't require that. I think the state requires you do it, but this antique thing might throw a wrench into that might change that. But I think the clerk and the treasurers are not going to back off on that if they don't have to. I have one technical correction also on page 6, that line 2. I think the maker meant for that to be 4. And I believe that's IV, not VI. So I think it's just a technical correction.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. And I will double check, but Mr. Chairman, I do not believe, number one, it's not up to the counties. It's up to us as a body to determine whether or not somebody has to pay back taxes and back registration fees. And I don't believe that's in statute. I've had a vehicle sitting and I've gone and repaid it, and it sat not in a barn, but in a covered area for a couple of years, and I did not have to pay for the license plates on that. I had to pay for the following year. That was basically me being allowed to drive it on the streets for the next year, not for what I did not use it for. But I can certainly verify that with the county treasurers. They would be the ones that can inform us on that.
Please, Representative Brown, I'd appreciate you would verify that with them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Hutchings?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I had friends that had these antique vehicles. They'd ride them around in the parade, and then, you know, they stick them in their garage, and you never see it again until a CFD when I look at these prices on page 7, you've gone from $10 to 500% increase, transfer of plates, $10 from 2, and then the annual sticker of $50. And I'm sure if they take these out on the road, they're going to have to pay the ruck fees and keep track of all the mileage that they're putting on these vehicles. This is a drawback for me in voting yes for this bill on these fees. Is there a reason why we increase them so much? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Senator Hutchings, again, I personally don't have a dog in the fight. The original bill did not adjust this at our last meeting. It was requested of me to go back and have these fees increased. If we move this bill and we would like to adjust those fees down or up, whatever you want to do, I'm really not married to that. The original intent of this legislation, as I brought it forward to the committee last meeting, was to basically change the effect of the fact that we have 25-year-old cars now that were in 1985 and people are grabbing plates and driving around on those. And number 2, verifying that these vehicles are covered with liability insurance as well. Minimum. We don't require that, and I don't understand why. So those were the 2 original intents on having this bill drafted and brought forward for the committee's consideration.
So Representative Brown, when was the last time these prices were set? Do you know that?
Mr. Chairman, I do not. Mr. Rossetti from YDOT may have it, but I believe this was since the inception of the Pioneer Plate, whenever that one originally was.
Taylor, do you know, Mr. Rossetti, do you know when these were last set?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that is correct. That has been the fee that was established along with the original legislation.
So, no, I was asking about the last time this $10 was set.
I'd have to go back and verify when the actual statute was originally passed to create the Pioneer Plate.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jarvis, do you know?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking.
Okay, thank you. Co-Chairman Eklund.
Yeah, so I'll set up a scenario here. It looks like the YDOT could make money on this. I think they could lose some money too. I couldn't figure out anything in this bill that would prevent me from using, 4 different mid-size farm trucks or tandem axle farm trucks ranging from 1966 to early 70s. And cutting the cost from about $120 to $160 down to $50, and use that to put a Pioneer Plate on it and use it about as often as I do, which isn't very often.
So,
Does
Chairman,
this prevent me from doing that, or
Yes.
or okay, go ahead.
Chairman Eklund, it says operated solely for purposes of organized antique car club activities, parades, exhibitions, tours, and other related activities. So that's why I think your farm trucks would not fit in this.
Okay, all right.
Representative Blake?
Louis.
I just had a comment on, I had a vehicle that hadn't run for several years, and I just had to sign an affidavit here at Sweetwater County that said I hadn't used that car on the road. So that, and just a question. So in 4 more years, the 1985 Mustang II will be eligible for a Pioneer Plate. So this is always a rolling number. So every 10 years, are we going to change it to 50 years, 60 years? So that would be my question to Representative Brown. Is this a rolling number that we're going to keep changing?
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Blake, being part of that esteemed group that you and I are both members of. I fully recognize the understanding that we have set up a situation now where, you know, a vehicle of 1985 will be available. However, I think that that's much more in line than what we're talking about with a vehicle in 1990, 1995. 40 years, I think, is what, the committee had asked for. Again, I'm not tied to that, but this was something that Representative Laux and I had tossed around. And so I have still been working on it. It will be a rolling 40 years. It was originally, I had asked for a year set of 1979, and the committee did not agree with that. So again, if we would like to change this to 45 years, 50 years, whatever, again, my heart's not set on that, but I do think what we need right now is to look more seriously at the Pioneer Plate and what the Pioneer Plate actually means, as opposed to just allowing people to purchase these plates for $10 and then drive around on them. That's really the crux of the issue. And Mr. Chairman, I did get a verification from the county treasurer. You just sign an affidavit of non-use, and they charge forward for 1 year. So there is not you do not have to pay a back license fee.
So Representative Blake, you have follow-up?
A follow-up with maybe Colonel Haller, but so these are only supposed to be driven for car club activities, parades, exhibitions. Is there a penalty involved with using these plates for anything? Like if you see a Pioneer plate on a 85 Mustang going out to the base every day, I don't think that would follow under the meaning or the purpose of this plate. Is there a penalty involved? Can law enforcement pull that car over and say, I've seen this car every 5 days in a row going to work? Yeah, I just wondered what the penalty was and if they do pull people over for this.
Colonel Haller.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Blake, yes, sir. If certainly under your circumstance, there was a pattern of behavior and the vehicle was being used on a regular basis, that would be a registration violation for that antique plate. Having said that, these are difficult to enforce. But again, I believe troopers and law enforcement in general are looking for flat out abuse of antique plates use and those vehicles.
Senator Blake, did that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colonel.
Senator Anderson, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I did. I'm confused. We're talking about antique plates here, and then every once in a while we throw in Pioneer plates. We already have Pioneer plates that are on older vehicles, but I'm looking here at that kind of defines both of them as antique. So I'm kind of wondering if we're not talking about two different plates.
Are we? Representative Brown, do you know?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I have been using the terms interchangeably, and you are correct. They are not the same. I believe, and I will double check with Mr. Rossetti on this. I thought the Pioneer plates were the $10 plates, but maybe I'm incorrect on that. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know if those are interchangeable or not off the top of my head. I know that the language that we have in the bill uses antique vehicle. Whether or not you can apply a Pioneer plate to the antique vehicle, I don't know for sure, Mr. Chairman. I would have to defer to Mr. Rossetti on that.
Mr. Rossetti, do you have an answer?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Those plates are interchangeable. That Pioneer plate is actually the way we chose to move forward with the antique motor vehicle plate when that was originally instituted.
So Senator Anderson, did that answer?
So now we won't have a Pioneer plate. We'll have an antique plate as defined in this. But we got a lot of vehicles out there with Pioneer plates on them.
Mr. Rossetti?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Anderson, sorry if I was not clear. The Pioneer license plate is issued to an antique motor vehicle. So this will not change that as the way Representative Brown has presented this bill. This is not in effect creating a new plate, sorry.
You good?
No, I'm not. I'm looking at page 3. It defines how the plate is built and everything.
Mr. Chairman, that's existing statute. So we're not changing anything there. That's all existing statute. And if you look there, it says the plate shall bear that. That plate is then affixed to the antique motor vehicle to which it's assigned.
Okay,
All right. Ms. Jarvis,
Mr. Chairman, the fee of $10 was established in 1984 when this was created.
so quite a while ago. Ms. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wondered, and I might have missed this because I've had a lot of people coming to my door today, so I apologize. How did you come up with the numbers on the plates as far as what to charge? And then what was the impetus behind the annual validation sticker, just to kind of keep track? Could you just answer those questions for me? Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Senator Steinmetz, this all came from our last committee meeting. I brought an original bill just changing the bill from 25 years to 1979, and the conversation certainly morphed last meeting, and it was requested of me to have this bill drafted with a higher fee as well as a annual fee to have these vehicles licensed if they're going to drive on our road. Right now, they pay $10 one time, and that's it. They never have to license the vehicle again. They never have to do anything with that vehicle ever again. So this, again, I'm not married to these numbers whatsoever. If the committee wishes to move this bill and change those numbers, I'm fine with that. This was just the discussion that was brought forward last committee meeting, was to increase those fees and make it an annual fee as well.
So Representative Brown, if you did inflation, would you come up to close to $50 or more than $50?
Mr. Chairman, I could not tell you on an inflationary basis. It was requested at $50 in the meeting from last time around. So inflationary, I would think it would probably be far higher than that, but I don't know for sure.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Co-Chairman Eklund.
I'm getting back to my farm trucks here. So if we go to page 3 of the bill, bottom of the page, we already have something, it's already in statute, and I'm not understanding, but it said distinctive license farm stickers shall be issued by the county treasurer upon request for trucks and trailers used by any farmer or rancher for the transportation of livestock. Why is that in here? Does that have to do with old trucks? I don't get it. Why is it even in this part of the statute? Because these are trucks that are being used to ship product around, not commercial use.
Mr. Chairman, I think Ms. Jarvis has the answer to that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, that section of law speaks, it is 30, if you go back to page 231-2-204, it's talking broad, this section is talking broadly about issuing license plates overall in general. So subsection B is not only about antique vehicles. There is just one line in that behemoth of a paragraph that refers to antique license plates. And so only that sentence is what's modified in that big old section, or in that big old subsection. And so that subsection, it refers to what license plates look like. It refers to that it should use Arabic numerals. It should have the Wyoming. It should have the bucking horse. It refers to weights of different utility trailers. And it refers to, because it's all about the issuance of the license plates or the stickers. And so only on page 3 at the bottom, that sentence that starts on line 18 about antique license plates is the only part that's modified of this subsection.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You can't still use your farm trucks and put an antique vehicle registration on them.
They're still pretty cheap to use.
They are. Other comments, questions? Seeing none. Is there any public comment on this, Mary Beth?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anyone listed for public comment.
Okay, back to the committee. What'd you like to do?
Move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Anderson moved it. Second by Representative O'Haron. Any amendments to the bill? Page 1, page 2. Is Senator Steinmetz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually, I raised my hand before you, I knew you were going through page by page. So
That's fine.
my amendment starts on page 3, line 20. After issue, take out or validation. And then on page 7, line 11, take out section C, annual validation sticker. And if I can get a second, I'll explain my thoughts.
I'll second.
I just feel like this is a excessive increase, and that we're trying to, there's a lot of people on a fixed income that enjoy their car clubs. They're also suffering the costs of inflation and paying their bills and things like that. So I would just like to make it a little easier and less cumbersome on them to not have to take care of this annually, but to just pay the initial plate fee of the $50 and have the transfer fee and just leave it a little more like they've been dealing with it all along. So it's a policy decision, voted up or down, but just trying to compromise a little here rather than increase from $12 to basically 110. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you want to also remove page 7, line 11, and annual validation sticker. You'd like to also take that out?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's what I'd like to do.
Okay, thank you. And the second was Representative Brown, or could have been Representative Senator Hutchings.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Senator Hutchings, thank you. Any comments, Representative Brown?
Mr. Chairman, again, I'm certainly not married to any of this. These were requests brought forward by the rest of the committee. And the request, the conversation, I'm just trying to refresh the committee's memory on this. The discussion was held that these vehicles pay this fee one time, and then they get to drive their vehicles on the road and whatnot. So again, neither here nor there. It doesn't bother me one way or the other, voted up or voted down. It's just that this was the committee's request. So.
Okay, thank you.
Please,
Other comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, sir. Representative Brown, when you say they get to drive them on the road, they're not doing it every day. It may be once a year for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and then they're done. Is that usually what they do? They're not driving them every day on the roads.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hutchings, I think it's variable. I think that's a very loaded question, because I certainly know of at least one individual here in Cheyenne that I see him drive his shiny 68 Corvette back and forth between his house and McDonald's every Saturday morning. It's certainly not for a car show. It's certainly not for a parade. It's none of those things. He just, during the summer, that's his car he likes to drive on Saturday mornings to show for his buddies. So, but I could also imagine exactly like what you're saying. If we have somebody who parks a Model T and drives it during, Lingle days or something like that, yeah, you're probably dead on there. But again, this is, I don't have a dog in this fight. If we want to get rid of the annual validation sticker, so be it. I'm fine with that.
Okay, other questions, comments? Yes, Heather. Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Steinmetz, just to clarify, the intent of the amendment would be to remove the annual nature of things. Is that correct? So for example, if they're, I think perhaps it might be okay with you if this amendment were to pass for essentially all of that section 31-2-204 to go away, because the whole purpose of what was there was making it annual.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that would, and Heather, that would be make the conforming amendment throughout.
Okay, to make things so that an annualism goes away. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, that's the intent. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and if I may, just my personal comment on this, I guess, I would suspect personally, if you're driving an antique motor vehicle and you're driving it once a year, and that means you probably got another vehicle that you're using on a regular basis. My suspicion is that you probably have $50, less than $4 a month, or less than $5 a month to license a vehicle and drive it, periodically throughout the year. I don't think it's a tall number to ask, and it's, if you've got the money for an antique vehicle and you belong to a motor club or something like that, you probably have the $50 a year to license the vehicle. But that's just my personal opinion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, speaking against the amendment, the friends of mine that have vehicles that would fit in this category have plenty of money to pay $50 a year for the plates, and I think they should be paying it for using our highways and that kind of thing. So I'm against the amendment.
Okay, further comment, questions? Seeing none, are you ready to vote?
Question.
Okay, question being called. All in favor of striking the annual validation sticker, please say aye, or raise your hand in front of your cameras, please.
Aye.
Aye. 2, 3. I only see 3. All those opposed, please raise their hand in front of the camera. 7 noes. Is that what you had, Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I had 7 noes, but I had 4 ayes.
Okay, so that dies. That amendment died. Any other amendments on this bill? Okay. Seeing none. Did I hear the question called?
Comment.
Question called. All in favor of the bill, please raise your hand in front. Oh, no, Mary Beth needs a call. Roll.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Blake had a comment.
Representative Blake, did you have a
Comment
comment?
on the bill, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. I'm a no vote on this bill because I feel it's a few people who are taking advantage of this bill, where 98% of the people who have this Pioneer plate do not. So I think it's more a dealing with law enforcement needs to pull these people over and give them a citation if they're driving it as a daily driver. So that's why I'm a no vote, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Further comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Hutchins?
just quickly, and we hear this a lot in our committee, and I don't know, it kind of unnerves me. You know, if you've got an antique vehicle, you've got $50, you can pay for that. Well, we don't know how they got that antique vehicle. They could have inherited it. They could have been given the vehicle, and they could be living in that vehicle. We don't have a clue. So it just bothers me that we're always, oh, for a price of a Happy Meal, they could pay that. They can pay that. Well, not everybody can pay that. So I'm going to be a no on this bill just for the principle of not everybody has enough money to pay for all the fee increases that we're doling out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hutchins. Other comments, questions? If not, we're ready for the Mary Beth. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Chairman, this is a roll call vote on 21 LSO 99 version 6. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Hutchins.
As soon as I can unmute, no.
Senator Pappas, he voted.
Aye.
Oh, there he is. Senator Steinmetz.
No.
Representative Blake.
No.
Representative Brown.
Aye.
Representative Crank.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
No.
Representative Newsom.
No.
Representative Obermueller.
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Von Slater.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that bill passes.
Okay, so that bill has passed the committee and we're on public safety communication systems at 12 o'clock and it's now 2:45. Senator Landon, you have some questions?
Mr. Chairman, may I have privilege of the Zoom for just a moment?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I know you have a lot of work left to do. I've got to exit the scene here in just a moment to take up some early childhood education issues. Before I did that, I probably won't be able to get back to the committee. So I just wanted to tip my hat to you, Mr. Chairman. As we were talking during break, the first meeting that I ever came to as a state senator, you were the chairman, and it was this committee. So I guess in a way, things come full circle. We're going to miss you, and I just wanted you to know that you have been a mentor and a friend, and your statesmanship will be missed in the Wyoming Senate. I also want to let Representative Blake know that I'm really going to miss him too. Even though you were in that other place down at the end of the hall, your character, your wit, your enthusiasm and energy, it will all be missed. And you've done some extraordinary work and we're going to miss you. A tip of the hat also to Chairman Eklund. And Chairman, I appreciate the tidbits of information you've given us chairmen who are coming in. We have a lot of issues that we face on our infrastructure, and it's our job to carry forth on the work that you and Chairman Von Flatern have done. So, Mr. Chairman, thanks for giving me a moment. I wish you Godspeed in the next chapter, and we're sure going to miss you.
Well, thank you, Representative Landon, and thank you, Senator Landon, excuse me. And thank you very much for those kind words. And the reason we got rid of Representative Blake was because his voice was so good.
Yeah, when we lost the lead singer in the Senate, I mean, it was only right that we had to
exactly.
the plane service, right? There you go. So
thanks, Bill.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Representative Blake, you're awesome. Thank you. See you guys.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Bill.
All right. So we are on to public safety communication systems, WyoLink updates, funding options, and alternative source systems. Director Reiner, are you here? You want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I am here. I think really the task here is a quick update on WyoLink. I'm going to start with a quick story. I'll kick it over to Mr. Babbitt, and then we can pass it to the counties. But if I could have the first slide, let me I just want to share a success story with you. I tell you, I think it's important to talk about how good the system is working and how it's matured. And if you look at this little map, here a couple weeks ago, there was a high-speed chase that started in Gillette and ended in Douglas. 147 miles, pretty fast. And the story, and I don't want to go through all the details based on time, but there was 5 different agencies that were involved in this chase. It started with MAT1, which is the mutual aid channel on WyoLink up in Gillette with the Gillette Police Department, and certainly the Campbell County Sheriff's Department was involved as they headed south. The Wyoming Highway Patrol jumped in and they pursued this dude out of California all the way from Gillette down to Douglas, where they eventually stopped him. But the success of this in terms of public safety communications and the ability to interact over great distances with multiple departments is a success of what we have built in this state. And I just thought we should share that as here's an example of success. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to pass the mic to Mr. Babbitt for a quick update on how we're doing on sort of the technical side of WyoLink.
Thank you, Mr. Babbitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Troy Babbitt, Chief Technology Officer at WYDOT. Emergency Communications is one of my 3 programs underneath me, and WiLink happens to be one of the programs that is underneath there. So I will do this very brief update asked for by Chairman Eklund to the status of where we're at. So system upgrade. Of course, safety and emergency comms is one of our top priorities for safety, and also one of our guiding principles within WYDOT. So as we did apply for the CARES Act funding, and we were denied on that for one of 3 reasons. Either it needed to be COVID related, it could not be in any previous budget per se, and the funds had to be spent by December 31st. So as this can has been kicked down the road for years. We need to get upgrades on the Quantars to the GTRs. And in the last session, we were approved for 1/3 of that purchase with WYDOT funds. We took the initiative, we worked with the vendor, Motorola came back. What we came out with an agreement is to try and fund this thing to get our upgrades for the hardware across the system for 3 bienniums. When you get only 1/3 of it, it makes it quite a challenge to try and get a holistic view and get the system upgraded in time to take care of cybersecurity issues, patches. Now you're dealing with different versions of hardware, software. So we've come to an agreement, and we have started that right now. So we are in the process of starting the first Quantar upgrades to GTRs. And with that, we also determine a predictable annual maintenance amount as well. So I'm going to be very simplistic because this is a very, very detailed program per se. You basically have 3 funding deals with WiLink. You have the core, which is the hardware, which is the network. WYDOT is responsible for the core of that. We monitor it with Motorola, our partners, 24/7 to make sure that the radio system, all those towers, everything is uptime happens there. You've got the annual maintenance amount, and that's where locals have been asked to, possibly into the future, contribute based on usage. 70% is what the locals basically utilize that network. WYDOT and other state agencies, 30%. So there's the annual maintenance piece, which is number 2, and then there's the endpoint, which is the radios and the devices, and that's where you have an opportunity to possibly have some different vendors per se. The other part of it was built over 15 years of proprietary, rock solid Motorola type coverage. So I just want to make clarification on that. So we did work on that, and we're moving forward on finally slaying that upgrade and getting that moving forward. On the 16 new towers, we've got 3 of them up and running: Buffalo, Orange Junction, and Wright. And as the director just mentioned, that high-speed chase went right through Wright. Good communication connectivity. We hear an awful lot of it from our highway patrol and our maintenance, our snow plows, about the improvements on those locations. Jackson right now is in testing. So we've got a site there that is picking up some of the valley there in Jackson. And then we've got 12 other sites under different variations of construction and landowner discussions. You've got Alcova, Alva, and Grable actually have the towers up, and as well as equipment coming on site and the shelters in place. So a lot of movement there. So those are coming on board very quickly, and the construction is moving forward. Paging. This is one of the things that we heard a couple of years ago, and certainly for volunteer fire department, that was incredibly important. It couldn't happen on the older version of the network. With this new upgrade, paging is now an option. Again, critically important for possibly some of the smaller volunteer fire departments that may not be able to afford a full-blown radio, but now there could be paging capabilities. Our recommendation is to get in touch with our WiLink office. I do have our technical expertise, Nate Smolinski. He's our emergency communications program manager for technical expertise here. And we will work with volunteer fire departments or whoever's got a paging system to see if it qualifies and what would it take to get the paging into this new system or the upgrade per se. So a lot of wins there. Interoperability. I would like to take just a few minutes for the opportunity to educate on this particular one, because we get asked this an awful lot, and I want to make sure that you as a committee understand where we're at and our expertise on bringing this forward. So the new system will allow for interfaces to be able to operate with local systems, possibly if in fact what that technology looks like. First of all, Sublette County. A couple of years ago, they decided to build their own core network for their county, and it's a Harris system. Okay, so now they have the Harris proprietary system within their county. We have worked with Sublette County in the past few years. We've upgraded our system now, so what we can do what's called an ISSI connection. It's an inter sub system interface connection, which basically lowers the level to a minimum so that the two systems can communicate together. Highly reliant on a dispatch system that needs to know what's going on per se, but those two systems in the future could possibly roam back and forth onto each other. You know, holistically, the state of Wyoming is Motorola. Now we have a Harris system specifically with Sublette County. We're ready to do the testing. We are now, in fact, waiting for the Harris system to get up to a point where they can test with us. But all indications we've done on our side looks very favorable in that interoperable communications with a different radio emergency communications system. So the next one on interoperability, I want to make very clear on this. When I talk about FirstNet and LTE, long-term evolution, and cell phone interoperability, because you guys are going to hear that from all over. That's the future. We've already talked in this committee as to technologies moving very fast. That is in fact true. But FirstNet is a data-only network. It's as you take a look at a cell phone type service, and we've even seen it on here with some of the communications. You know what it's like trying to drive and lose connectivity. On emergency communications, that's unacceptable. The radio network is rock solid. Cell service is going to get there eventually, but we believe in rural Wyoming, it's probably another decade. We would not have made the investment that we did based on what we know. And we're involved on all those national level meetings as to upgrades and what that means for rural states. So that's where WiLink is going to be around for a long time. We're making sure that whatever that technology is, that it'll interoperate with our system per se, because you're not going to flip a switch in rural Wyoming and all of a sudden have cell coverage that all of a sudden becomes emergency communications. Absolutely not. So we're here to help educate people, because I've seen people say that this is the future. We don't need WiLink. That's just simply not true. It's going to be like any other type of a network. It's going to grow in the urban areas first, where there's a population base, and they'll continue to as they move forward. AT&T is actually FirstNet. They're the ones who are building out. South, if you take a look at an AT&T coverage map, they're doing much better. They're doing a build out, but the southwest corner of the state really needs to have some coverage per se. So they're working, but they're looking at several years out before they even have cell phone technology. And cell phone technology takes a tower approximately every 40 miles to get coverage. So with WiLink, we have currently 80 towers, soon to be 93, that covers almost 99% of the state. Okay, that's awesome. And our emergency responders rely on that. And also that takes care of situations that I'll talk about here too, is in those rural areas where you have the fires. You're not going to get that coverage with a cell phone connectivity into the future. So again, it's going to grow, but we're going to be in a position to bring it onto the WiLink, but you're going to have two systems that's going to be operating differently. And another point I just want to really make clear is when you have a WiLink radio and you press that button, you are immediately talking to a dispatcher for those emergency communications, and you're on a separate network. So you're on the old radio type of a network, which could be microwave, could be fiber, could be whatever. But that call is right there. Cell phone technology, it's going to get there. There'll be a button you'll be able to dial and get to where you need to, and there's going to be channel groups. But it's very immature in its early stages for emergency communications. And again, they're only looking at it as data only. It is not mission critical voice, whereas the WiLink radio network is mission critical voice. And we anticipate that for, again, another decade at a minimum, I would imagine. So that's, again, WiLink covers, 98,000 square miles across Wyoming. So we're going to continue to make that system better. When these final 13 towers come on, it's going to be even that much stronger. So a lot of good things happening there with the coverage on that. So broadband, there's some proposed legislation for the co-location and lease options available for towers with the ISPs. We've been doing this for some time. Last couple of years, if in fact we have a WiLink tower and there is room on there for probably a fixed wireless connection, internet service providers, we've shared our locations of our towers So we've had several come to us and taken a look at, and we do have some agreements as well. You know, one of the broadband proposals is you're going to see that, you know, we can't ask for more than 25% of what the market value would be for recovering that. Okay, so that in itself means that this is not a moneymaker for WYDOT. If we do receive any funds, and we do have a couple of agreements with a couple of service providers, those funds currently go back into an account that goes to the general fund. There is proposed legislation on the broadband side that will actually come back into the WildLink network and benefit a little bit. But again, a lot of these locations are on mountaintops in the rural areas of Wyoming, picking up a few ranches, those kind of things. And that's what we work with the service providers to understand is what's the 100% number of customers you could actually get on here? What would you charge those customers? And then that's where we get to a position of trying to negotiate, you know, a long-term 10-year lease. And again, it's usually a very small amount, but it would come back and benefit the system. So you will hear a couple of those things, and we are already doing those things on the broadband element. When the CARES Funding Act was mentioned, there was a lot of interest, and we shared a lot of information with mapping on where our towers are, and we'll continue to do that. And we work with the service providers, and those relationships are getting better. So next slide. Just a couple final points. The Mullen Fire, WildLink was utilized as a primary interoperable radio network during that fire, and there it burned an estimated, you know, 176,000 acres, and it was 95% contained on October 29th. My understanding is now it's 97, still not totally out, but we're getting very close, but it played a critical role in that. As a matter of fact, one of our sites was actually in fear of being overrun by the fire, but the fire teams did an outstanding job and prevented that from happening. And we did not lose a WildLink location there. So statistics, as you've seen before, WildLink last year, we had over 12 million calls in 2019. We do anticipate that maybe to be a little bit lower just because of COVID and the lack of numbers on the roads, possibly affecting 2020's numbers per se. But again, it is the primary radio network used for calls. Again, we have over 500 agencies, over 16,000 users on the system. And again, we believe that power is in the collective whole as a statewide membership. You know, we work with anybody, fire departments, police, sheriffs, any of those folks that come on board to try and get the best comms for their location, because obviously in the event of an emergency, the first thing you reach for is some type of a communication system. So the user fees that have been discussed for a while, those have been covered for this biennium, the 21-22, but the long-term solution is still to be determined. But we're having conversations with all of our stakeholders as well. So the key to that is keeping them on our network. And then of course it keeps the roads safer and our emergency response very rapid. So I know that was very quick, and I certainly would stand for any question.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, there you go.
I think Co-Chairman Eklund took it back, but.
Yeah, my internet's working. Go ahead, Senator Anderson.
I have a question on that last slide. The fees are paid for the biennium. Was that paid by the users or was that paid by somebody else?
Sir, that was paid for with the FMR royalties amount until exhausted. That is how current legislation is written. So FMR amount paid for that for this current biennium.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Do we have Jeremiah Ryman? Are you here?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeremiah Riemann. I serve as Executive Director of the County Commissioners Association. I appreciate the committee taking up this topic. It's certainly an important one for counties as we move forward. If it pleases you, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is actually have Kelly Little, our Deputy Director, take it over from here. She's our primary lead on this issue, and and has been working with the other counties in preparation for this presentation.
Welcome to our meeting, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, as Jeremiah said, my name is Kelly Little. I'm the Deputy Director at the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Thank you for the time today to give an link and the path that we are taking to secure a steady, reliable funding source for maintaining this system well into the future. With WYDOT's hard work on the system over the last several years, the system's coverage and reliability have increased greatly. We believe this system is an invaluable and necessary tool for the safety and well-being of the citizens of Wyoming. However, we have been and are still concerned about the impact the maintenance of this have to state, county, and other budgets without a proper funding solution. Similar to state budget woes, most county budgets are stretched to the max, and adding any additional expense is difficult. Many counties would have to reconsider their use of the system or find alternative solutions that are more budget friendly if we can't find a funding solution. To that point, during this interim, we have compiled a group of stakeholders that have agreed to participate in meetings to discuss any and possible funding solutions. This stakeholder group includes representatives from county commissions, sheriff's offices, police departments, fire departments, taxpayers, municipalities, and schools. We hope to also get input from WYDOT and from industries that play a critical role in public safety communications. As this happened with several projects in 2020, COVID-19 threw a wrench into our plans for those discussions. As you all know, requested CARES Act funding to pay for maintenance of the system for the near term. However, that funding did not come to fruition. Now we feel the timing is ideal to have this conversation. We plan to, over the next several months, meet and brainstorm and work towards a solution to fund the maintenance of the system and request that solution be included in the next biennial budget. As this process progresses, we will keep the Joint Transportation Committee apprised of our discussions and findings. To help give you an update on WyoLink today, we're joined by Chad Dingus, the Albany County Fire Warden. He is here to share with you his experience with the system, the importance of maintaining this tool for Wyoming, and how the uncertainty of sustainable funding could affect his ability to do his job in the future. This committee also asked to hear from Sublette County and the process they have gone through to install an alternative system, which you heard a little bit about from Mr. To give that testimony, we are joined by Sublette County Commissioner Tom Noble, Sublette County Sheriff Casey Lair, and Shad Cooper, Fire Chief and Sublette County Fire Warden. If it is the chairman's pleasure, I'd be happy to take questions now or after the others have been their testimony. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions for Mrs. Little? Okay, not seeing any. Which of our guests would like to go first?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend Mr. Dingus with the Albany County Fire Warden. So Chad is his name.
Okay, Chad, go ahead.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to give my perspective about my relationship with WyoLink. And thank all of you for the thankless work that you guys do for all of us in Wyoming. I appreciate that. Just want to share with you that I've been involved in emergency services for about 35 years now. First radio I got handed was a 2-watt standard radio with channels A and B. Had a rubber band around it. And I asked one of the older guys what the rubber band was for. And he said that if you can't get through to the guy you're trying to call, you can tuck a note underneath that rubber band and throw the radio at him. So I, as much as anyone, appreciate how far we've come with communications in Wyoming, and would echo what Director Ryman said and Mr. Babbitt about how effective this system is and how well it works. I want to give you an example of kind of spinning off of the Mullen fire. That, of course, was in my neck of the woods and took up quite a bit of our time this year. When that fire was looking like it was going to threaten Centennial and Albany and some of the Centennial Valley, my deputy warden started making phone calls to some of our friends and gathered up resources from other fire departments in the area and as far away as Goshen County. We were able to we called that the Surge Resource Group. And what we did is we called them up when we felt that the impact to some of those structures and stuff was going to be imminent. We brought in people from Goshen County, Hawk Springs, Yoder, Fort Laramie, Torrington, Sabile, and we were able to bring all those engines in and very quickly have interagency communications with the flip of a switch. That was key in our ability to have any level of success in what we were doing. Some of the firefighters will complain about WyoLink, but it doesn't, I mean, it has inherent limitations, and that is the fact that it is, radio frequency. There's magic that goes on there. So it works as well as it can, and we all appreciate how well it works. My concern is that the ongoing funding for this program, a change in that funding stream could greatly impact our interoperability with other departments. And this is kind of the boots in the dirt perspective that I can bring to you. The guys that I work with are rural firefighters, and those guys are generally not, driving fancy trucks or wearing fancy uniforms. Those guys are ranchers for the most part. And they pull away from their job on the place to help us out in an emergency. And they do that, they're volunteers, of course, and they do that asking for no compensation whatsoever. The only thing that they ask from us is that we provide them with the tools that they need to do that job safely and effectively. Unfortunately, with the budgets that we have, we're not always able to give them the best and shiniest thing that is available. Oftentimes their uniforms are old and their helmets are old and the trucks certainly are old. The one thing that we are able to provide because of the WyoLink system is a very effective means of communication, and that critical life safety communication is something that's super important. What I feel, and from talking to my colleagues, and I'm sure you won't find it hard to believe that anytime you get more than a half a dozen firefighters together, this topic will come up. And it has for many, many years, because our concern was the expense going forward with this program. My concern is that smaller departments will simply not be able to pay for a maintenance fee for this program. And I think that, with the volunteers around the state, you may hear some of my colleagues say the same type of thing. If some of the smaller departments are not able to pay, if any of them aren't able to pay, really interoperability goes out the window. It's kind of an all or nothing, and we're either all on the same page or we're all not on the same page. So those are kind of my primary concerns going forward with the funding on this. And with that, thanks again, and I could stand for questions if there are any.
Committee, do you have questions? Okay. The main complaint I hear about the WyoLink system, especially from the volunteer firemen, is that they may have to pay for it one of these days. And other than that, it must be a really sound system. Thank you for your testimony. Now, who's next?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mary.
I believe Shad Cooper, Casey Lear, sorry if I messed up your name, and Tom Noble.
Okay, Mr. Cooper, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is Tom Noble, County Commissioner. I'm joined with Shad Cooper, our Fire Chief, and Casey Lear, our Sheriff. In the essence of your time, we'd just like to jump right into whatever questions you may have for us. Our goal is to work with and complement WyoLink in any way possible, and I believe that they have been showing the same gratitude towards us. So I'd open that up to any questions for Casey Lear or sheriff or fire chief. They've been the boots on the ground implementing our project. And we're of course a little behind, but coming close.
Committee, do you have questions?
Representative Henderson has his hand up.
Yes, Representative Henderson, I don't see you, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I understand that Sublette counties took a different approach to the system that we're talking about here in terms of the effects on interoperability, whatever. But I was wondering two things. Are you on budget for your plan? And you said you're a little behind on your schedule, but those two can't go separately. So just a quick update on, are you on budget for your planned installation?
Go ahead, Shad. Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, my name's Shad Cooper. I'm the fire chief for Sublette County Unified Fire. I'm happy to answer your question. Yes, we are currently on budget. Harris has been an excellent partner in working with us to identify low-cost solutions and stay within the line item, the funding allocation that we've established for this project. And we have not seen any significant cost overages with the Harris contract. Now, there has been some unforeseen circumstances. During the Roosevelt fire in 2018, one of our radio tower sites was burned over and destroyed. And we were required to rebuild that radio tower site as a unforeseen consequence of that fire. So yeah, there has been some additional costs, but that wasn't as a result of any cost changes or change orders from the Harris contract. And in fact, we've actually worked closely with Harris and the scoping minor changes. They've been $0 change orders. So no, we're still on target with the anticipated cost, and we're actually very pleased with the amount of money that we've expended to date to build out less than it could have been. As far as your question about the timing, yeah, we are behind schedule as a result of the Roosevelt fire and the time necessary to build that new comm site, and plus with some other changes, we ended up changing one of the tower locations from a leased tower to building our own tower instead. And it took us some time to put that together. But those time delays have been manageable. We're all but built out now. If I had to estimate, we're all 5 towers of the new Harris radio system are built. All towers are in the air. All shelters are in place and have power ran. And the cores we have 2 cores. One's in Pinedale and one's in Marvelton. The cores are in place and connected, and we're currently broadcasting and testing the system and measuring the coverage in the county. And we're probably 95% or more built out at this time, and now it's time to work out the final details before we go live.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions?
Representative
Yeah,
Crank.
Representative Crank. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the Sublette group. Do you have a feel? So you're a different system than the state. So when you got started, there must have been, a reason driving you that way. I assume you bid it out was different systems, and the one you ended up with, is it 5% more cost effective or 5% over, or how did you end up getting where you're at?
Go ahead, Chief. Yeah, so we hired an outside, a third-party radio consultant firm, Tusa Consulting, and they came and analyzed the existing radio system and the WildLink system in Sublette County, and recommended that either we enhance the WildLink system, or we build our own system, or a combination of those two. After several meetings, we were unable to come to a partnership with WildLink, and so we moved forward and went to an RFP, a request for proposals, and received several. Well, I shouldn't say several. We received 2 different proposals, one from Motorola and one from Harris. We analyzed both of those proposals, and there was a significant price difference in the 2 proposals. And there was actually a difference in what was included in those proposals. Based on that and the in-depth analysis that we'd done at the time, the more cost-effective solution that for the proposals that we received was the Harris proposal. So after receiving the RFPs, we awarded the bid to Harris, and then began contract negotiations to finalize the details of the build-out.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
If I may follow up, can you give us an idea of a percentage you think you saved, or your system's probably a little different, so I don't know that we're comparing apples to apples, but you said significantly. Are we looking 5%, 50%?
So Mr. Chairman and Representative Crank, the 2 bids that we received, they were approximately, just doing the math in my head, they were approximately 25% different from each other.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have other testimony, Mary Beth?
Mr. Chairman, we do. We have a couple of members from the Public Safety Communications Commission. I believe Mark Harshman is available, as well as Skip Honecker and Doug Frank.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. So, Mr. Harshman, would you like to?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Mark Harshman, Chairman of Public Safety Communications Commission. I don't have a lot to add to the narrative other than as a representative of the Fire Service, the Fire Chiefs Association in Wyoming, our fire chiefs are very, very concerned about ongoing funding of the system. And as you've heard from my other fire colleagues, it could get to the point where small rural fire departments could not afford to pay a maintenance fee for WildLink, and then would be forced to go back to their legacy systems, which are still operable at this point because that's how they're doing paging. And you heard that we can now offer paging through WildLink, which is a good thing for the fire service. But this lingering cloud hanging over funding of the system long-term is very problematic. And certainly we have great interoperability now, and that is something that we value very much, and we don't want to lose that aspect because interoperability is key to what we do in fire, as well as law enforcement and emergency medical services. And so we just urge that some solutions to procure long-term funding of the system is just critical. This is a system that everyone uses in the state, and it's an awesome system, and WYDOT has done a tremendous job of supporting the system from the beginning, and we just wish to secure a good funding stream. Thank you. I stand for any questions.
Committee questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, who's next? Mary Beth, I think we have somebody else, don't we?
Yes, we have a couple of additional people.
Okay.
Doug Frank is available.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I appreciate a moment to speak to you. And I've been whittling down my notes as we've gone through this. It's sort of like baking a cake, and a lot of great things have been said. And I appreciate that, because when Governor Meade first appointed me to the commission, the talk was a lot different about WyoLink. And I think now it's nice to hear user departments and users talk about it as a critical service that it really is. It's just central to our ability to respond. I think an interesting thing to point out about, when we've been delivering these faux bills and about users per se, in the last couple of years, we've added as many school districts as we have anybody. And we have federal agencies and school districts, and our users are complicated, but they are all there in the service of the people of Wyoming. So you have to ask yourself, what's the lowest common denominator or the greatest common denominator when you think about funding? And it's really the people of Wyoming. I think that's probably why we made a proposal to you all about the additional line charge on the phone bills as a great way to look at funding this, because the user departments all are not the same. There are municipalities and counties that don't have the same funds that others do. So, and we have such a complicated set of users. We're a little bit like the internet in a way, and it's a sum of its parts. So we want everybody in the system, and they all work as a means of netting out for the great state of Wyoming. So I don't know how you charge it back at this point. I can just tell you that it's an absolutely great system, and it gets better and better as we go. And it just is so critical when we have big events like the Mullen Fire and the example that the director used in the beginning about the car chase from Gillette. So I think one of the things I came into this as a potential funder when I was appointed to the commission, as opposed to a technical person. And, as a mayor of Glen Rock at the time, Converse County, Glen Rock, Douglas, we've all written pretty big checks for our part of emergency telecommunications. A lot of counties and municipalities have. I think I don't have any easy answers on this, except to say it just benefits the whole state and the people of the state in a way that it's hard to separate this out in terms of funding need. It just has to happen. It's not negotiable. We talk about legacy systems. If you're like me, you still have one of those high-powered bag phones in your basement somewhere. They're about as effective as a doorstop. So, I also used to use Nextel in my business. And I could communicate with I had businesses down on the Gulf Coast and in New Mexico, and I could talk to all of them. Those channels are gone. And that type of telecommunications is gone. Same thing is happening in emergency telecommunications, and WyoLink has picked up the slack for analog in a lot of those things. And again, I'm not a technical user, but I can just tell you that WyoLink has become at the center of this, and a lot of our users don't even realize when they push the button on their mic, they're keying WyoLink. So, as somebody that came at it from a user's perspective and has spent some time around this, I'm really proud of what WYDOT has done to grow this and make it better. Our users have gotten better at using it, and we appreciate your attention to it, and thank you for your time. I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee? Thank you, Commissioner.
My pleasure.
All right, who's next?
Mr. Chairman, we have Nathan Smolinski. He is the program manager for WYDOT Telecommunications.
Welcome, Nathan.
Mr. Chairman, as
Mr. Babbitt pointed out, and Mary Beth did, I am the Emergency Communications Program Manager at WYDOT. And I can tell you that I've held this position for a year. Prior to that, I was the WyoLink Support Manager. And that has taken me to meet several of the agencies and users. And not to repeat some of what's been said already this afternoon, but a lot of the conversation and comments coming back and concerns to funding has definitely been something that I've been capturing, collecting as I meet with these folks. I don't have a whole lot else that I want to add to that, except I will stand for any questions at this point.
Committee questions? Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How are we doing now, Mary Beth? Do we still have people that are on deck?
Mr. Chairman, I don't believe I have anyone else.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for your testimony.
Can I speak, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
So Mr. Babbitt, how is WyoLink going to be funded 21, 22, 25, 28? How will it be funded in the future?
So Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent question. The contract that we negotiated for those 3 bienniums, again, I broke it into those 3 different elements. And as you look at the core element, at this point in time, WYDOT is picking up to get that thing upgraded for the hardware and software. That's the biggest lift. Then you've got the annual maintenance fee. And again, right now, that is being split 70% for locals and 30% WYDOT. And when I said that the fees were picked up by FMRs, that is only for the 70% of the local side of the fence of it. WYDOT is still paying for 30% for WYDOT, for other state agencies, for federal agencies, tribal, any of that elements that's that portion of it. So we're still picking up the 30%. Again, the way it's written in legislature until FMRs are exhausted, we don't know exactly when that's going to be. That was how it was written as to, if that point in time comes that we would need to bill users. We had a lot of discussions with users. We finally settled on, it seemed to be a fair solution as to usage. But it's a very complex system. And you've got other counties that actually have an 800 megahertz system. And I don't want to get down into the weeds, but there's some back and forth on some of those networks. So it starts to get complex as to who's using whose network and how do you define that, and who pays for what portion. So the large portion of it, from our perspective, WYDOT looks like we've taken charge. It certainly benefits our highway patrolmen out there on those interstates, as well as our snowplow folks, all of our utility folks. So we're taking part of the core of the network, the backbone. There is opportunity for fiber optics to make more redundancy into the microwave backhaul network. We're looking at all those type of things. So we're funding that element. The maintenance, the single year maintenance agreement, which I just mentioned, that's the piece that I think we're really wanting to figure out with Wyoming County Commissioners and WAM and anybody else that's a user on there as to what is fair to how do we pick up that extra 70% for annual maintenance fee. And then the endpoint radios is up to the endpoint folks to make sure that it's a P25 compatible radio to be able to utilize onto that network. And we'll work with agencies to make sure that whatever they decide. We are having conversations too. We're trying to put out or gather information from all those users, school districts, anybody that needs radios, so that we could look for efficiencies and purchasing capacity to buy more of a bulk and get a better discount per se. That's certainly on the table. We're having those discussions right now. So, I don't have the magic answer for you, sir. I wish I did, but I think that's the whole point of this committee coming forward. By the time we get to the next budget session, hopefully we've got some ways to help fund the annual maintenance fees.
Okay. Somebody's talking. Go ahead. Yeah.
Chairman. So quick question here, and this is probably directly for the director. Director Reiner, yesterday I asked how much the study was that we had that you guys had put forward through the can't remember the name of the company, but the study that we went through, and I would like to make sure I get that information as to how much that did cost. But I'm curious, with that was put out there, was there any discussion with that group about WyoLink being included in that, the needs assessment for WYDOT? And if so, what did that discussion look like?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, maybe a couple things there, and we'll get you the exact number. The thing to keep about on the money that was used for the study is federal money that was required that we spent on research. And so, pots of money, color of money do matter. And that was certainly a discussion as we said, hey, how are we going to fund this? And so I was very comfortable with the allocation of funds for that study in terms of the pot of money it came for, because it can't go to the roads. It had to be used in some sort of research assignment like this. In terms of the WyoLink, it was indeed part of that study. And if you go back and look at, I know we went through it pretty fast yesterday, but if there's one section in there that actually talks about the communications costs, and I'm actually I've still got it there from yesterday, where I think the annual shortage they're showing is just shy of $1 million in terms of unfunded. We did make the decision that we see WyoLink as no fail. We have to be able to talk. It could be your family, it could be my family out there on the road that needs help in an emergency. And so as we talk through priorities in this agency, emergency comms is very close to the top. And so we are, in terms of keeping this funding going, we are using we're using WYDOT assets to keep it funded. Now, what we can't do though is the annual maintenance fee that's been discussed. Okay, that because legislatively it's been directed that be paid by users once this extra funding pot is gone. And so that's a policy decision that's been made. And so I hopefully that answers you, but it's we have five segments in this agency, all of which need to be funded, and one pot of money. And so that's part of that prioritization that we talked about yesterday about, hey, how do you take the assets we have and prioritize it among all of these important things that we do to keep them all operational to some degree. And that's where that discussion of risk tolerance comes in.
Mr. Chairman, if I just a quick follow up, and I understand what we have legislatively. Was there any discussion with the unfunded mandate there? At $800,000, was there any discussion about looking at how that $800,000 would be significantly higher if we looked at taking care of that as a state, as opposed to pinning this on the, it all ultimately comes from the same pocket of money, right? It's the state's money, and it's just a matter of whether the county's paying it or if it's being directly administered to WYDOT. So I guess my question more directly is, was there discussion with the consultants on whether or not that would be beneficial, and whether that would cut the $800,000 that you guys are showing down?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I'm not sure I quite understand your question. Could you maybe rephrase that a little bit for me?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Was there discussion at the $800,000? Let me just ask this: that $800,000 that you guys have in there for communications, that did not represent anything that you guys are talking about as far as these the support that you guys you're claiming that it's 75-25, 70-30 splits right now. Is that correct, or is that in that $800,000?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, to the best of my knowledge, it's not included, but let me ask Mr. Babbitt, because he was involved, or Mr. Smolinski, because they are involved in the details of that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, that $800,000 is actually WYDOT's portion for our radio system. Those are radios for our maintenance folks and out there that was not funded. legislature basically came back and basically it was looked at as a 5-year replacement program. That was going to be our first 1/5 for radios only. So the only piece of it that we took a look at in that study at this, because we did fund the rest of it. So it is not inclusive the amount that we paid for getting the system upgraded. That 800,000 is only for radios of those 3 pieces of the pie that I'd mentioned.
That's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think, and Representative Brown, just to follow to that, I think the key thing there is the study that you heard yesterday is WYDOT only, not system all, in terms of sort of the legislatively directed requirement for others to pay the usage.
Okay. The annual cost for WildLink it's several million. How much is that cost for the maintenance system and
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, the negotiated price is approximately 2.7 million for the next 6 years.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is that 2.7 each year for the next 7 years or 2.7 total?
Mr. Chairman, that is 2.7 per year with the 70-30 split, 30% of that being WYDOT's lift, the rest of it the locals lift for annual maintenance.
Committee, any other questions? Yes, Director Reiner, go ahead.
Chairman, if I could just maybe add a discussion on the funding, and I know there's no solutions today, but just a thought to put in our minds is, we are certainly focused on this annual maintenance cost, and that's a good thing to be focused on. The other thing for us, I think, not to lose focus on as a state, and as the director of the agency that's responsible for this emergency communications, I just think it's important to just bring up that, hey, we all rely on the system, and over the long term, the discussion of funding for that system it remains relevant. And so, we're using, assets that WYDOT has, which are road user charges, because it's related to the road. But the discussion always, I think, should be is that what we want to do as a state? And is that what we want to do as we keep that system going forward? And I know there's no easy solutions here today, but really, I think the discussion becomes what's holistic, what's sustainable. Like all the systems we have is we buy them and they work. But over the years, we just got to replace parts and keep it going. And so I think that's a bigger part of the discussion. I appreciate the county commissioners, taking a lead on the short-term, maintenance costs. But at the broader picture, I think there's some further discussion to be had. We've got to solve for now, but that's not a long-term solution. And I would just end with that, Mr. Chairman.
Co-Chairman Eklund.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. This is Director Reiner's question is, since you are leasing some space on the towers, will it bring a lot of funding in or just a very little bit, not even worth mentioning?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman, in my mind, that's not even worth mentioning. It's very few towers, and it's 25. I believe that the bill that's out there right now is the suggested 25% of the going market rate. Right now, we aren't doing any of that. We're swapping for services. So in terms of the system paying for itself, renting space, I don't see that as a viable solution.
Okay. Any other questions? We're good. That pretty much brings us to the conclusion of the meeting. Before we check out here, folks, I would like to issue some real special thank yous. My co-chairman, Michael V., you have been a great partner to work with. I don't know if the committee understands how difficult it is for a unretired rancher to try to take on these meetings during awfully busy times of the year, Michael von Flatern has made that unbelievably easy and has picked up the slack whenever I just can't get things done, and I've appreciated that. Did you have any words you wanted to say before we?
Well, to Mr. Crank, Representative Tom Crank, I would thank him very much, and it was an honor serving with you. And Representative Blake, you know, we had to get rid of you for the voice. I'm sorry, but we worked hard. And for Dan Furphy, is he here?
He was.
Dan will be a senator next time, so goodbye for him. Oh, thank you, Dan. And for the rest of the group, it's been an honor serving with you, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I will be switching committees, and I have felt that my House Transportation Committee is the best committee I've ever sat on, and I got to chair it. Special thanks to you, Tom. I'll miss your thoughtfulness and your kind words and what you bring to the legislature. It's good to have engineers and other people there, and Stan, you too. We've
Mr.
served
Chairman?
on. Yes, go ahead.
If I could just say a few words.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So my first chairman was Dave Edwards. I think Michael's the only one who maybe served with Dave, but so Dave Edwards, Roy Coe, he was my chairman once. Lorraine Korberg, Dave's the one to serve you, Mr. Chairman Eklund. You're a great chairman and an even better friend. Thank you so much. And Michael V, thank you so much for everything. You're awesome. And I got to take a trip once with Senator Pappas. I don't know if he's still here. General Porter, who was then a colonel or a major or a captain, I'm not sure where he was, and Tucker Fagan. But we all got to fly to Jacksonville in a C-130 and toured the USS Wyoming. That was a special trip.
I'm still here, Stan.
You remember that trip? That was pretty fun.
I do, and it was a pleasure serving with you too in the legislature as well.
And to the LSO and YDOT, you know, our employees are top notch, and we need to remember that. And for Joe McGuire, I just want to say El Camino. Is it a car or is it a truck? I still haven't figured that out. So it's been a pleasure. I'll be kicking around. Who knows? I may be back someday. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Tom, go ahead and talk, Tom.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the kind words. You know, you and Mike Greer, my first and only chairman for 4 years. You know, I came into the legislature, didn't know anything. It was a real eye opener, to be frank, and I learned a lot, and a lot of it comes down to the chairman I've had and the good friends I've met. So I've appreciated being in the legislature the whole time, and coming up this next year looks pretty contentious to me, and I wish all of you folks that are there the best of. I know it's not going to be luck, it's going to be skill and understanding, and just hang in there, and some of us others have your back if need be. So thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. I would say I'm not really abandoning the Transportation Committee. I'll be on deck somewhere and try to help the bills along as much as I can. And if you need help, holler. My decision was kind of made easy. Agriculture is like breathing for me. I understand it really well. This Transportation Military Committee has been very difficult for me. I had to study it and reread it, and well, you've watched me struggle through it, I think. But that, and I'll probably be a little happier back at home in agriculture, which is an industry that I know really well.
I think Director Reiner had his hand up a minute ago.
Yeah.
Director, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could just maybe from a user perspective and as a director and as the past tag, really add a few words to what was said. Certainly my thanks to the two chairmen and you know, to Representative Blank and Representative Crank as you leave. The state and this nation is certainly better because of all of your service. And as we've worked together, I think this is my 10th session now, dealing with transportation and military affairs. It is certainly your leadership matters. Your care for the men and women in uniform matters. Your care for the men and women in orange and white dot matters. The decisions you make have a direct effect on the welfare of our state and on what we do and on how we perform. And certainly big shoes to fill for those of you that are leaving. From a personal perspective, I really appreciate, the hours of conversation talking about issues that matter, talking about issues that make a difference. And for both of you chairmen, certainly day or night, is a phone call away and lots of good discussion. And so, for those of you leaving, we wish you absolutely the best and thank you for the service to your state. Because that's how our nation works. And people will ask, hey, what's it like to be part of the legislative process? Say it's great. Because that's that's for those of us that serve is very special, because that's what we protect and that's what we defend. And that's what makes this nation the best in the earth. So with that, thank you again for your service, and we'll see you next time and see you at the next place. But go well, and it's been a pleasure to work with each one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. So I think Michael V. and I will stick around. I wanted to say special thanks to Heather and Mary Beth. I don't think I get to drag you over to agriculture, but I'll see if I can. I've enjoyed working with you. This staff makes it a lot easier for all of us. So thank you. And the meeting's adjourned, and a few of us will stick around and do some